I was scrolling Facebook the other day. I don't remember if I was doom scrolling or if I had some intent, but I was scrolling, and I see this post. And there's this post that essentially in some sort of way said, hey, I need $500,000 by like Friday or the end of the week or something like that. It basically was like, hey, I just need $500,000. And then that itself was ironic enough or kind of strange enough to see. Just someone casually saying like, hey, can someone throw me $500,000? And then even weirder were the comments. And I couldn't even imagine the DMs, probably the literal DMs that came in that said, hey, how do we structure this and what do we do? But the comments are like, sure. Like, what do you need? How are we going to structure this? What position are we in? And all of these things. And there were something like 50 or 60 comments on that post. And I wonder, like, what type of person can say, hey, I need $500,000 on a Facebook post and then get 60 something responses plus however many DMs and emails and whatever else to say, sure. How are we structuring this? I can bring in a friend. Here's some different ways we could do this. I only have X amount in my IRA, but I have, some money over here. How are we doing this? And I start thinking about that. I'm like, you have to be a couple of things as a person to be able to post that and get that response. And it tells me that this person is very trusted in their community. This person is very smart and intelligent because there's no other way that people would trust you with their money if you didn't know how to use it and get a return and things like that. This person is very experienced and creative. And I would also say that this person has a very strong network, a very strong group of people around them where you could post on Facebook, I need $500,000. Who has it? And then you get all kinds of responses. And that person is Rich Lennon. And I am thrilled to have Rich on the Virginia Investor Podcast today. Welcome, Rich.
Boy, I'm humbled, man. That was very humbling to hear. Yeah, good to be here, man. I really appreciate the invite, and I've been looking forward to it. Yeah,
awesome.
We're gonna have a good time.
We're gonna rewind and get back to the beginning, but real quick, what was that 500 about? Tell me a little bit about that.
God, I needed $500,000 by Friday, and I was in a deal, and one of my partners wanted out of the deal, and good partner, great guy, like no hard feelings, and he wanted to go do something with the money. And so I was just sitting around and I'm like, man, I need to come up with $500,000 in a couple of days. And I was just frustrated by the situation. So I just posted on Facebook, not really thinking anything of it. And yeah, a lot of people, first of all, I don't think if you see someone ask for $500,000 on Facebook, you should give it to them. I mean,
it's a good disclaimer.
That, that's probably worth mentioning. But yeah, a lot of people step forward, a lot of people willing to do it. I hope people look at that and realize that the money is the easy part of the business.
Correct.
And it's the other stuff that's the hard part.
That is a really interesting mindset. This is one of the reasons why I'm happy you're here, because most of the excuses that I hear of people trying to get into real estate is, I don't have any money. Money is everywhere. If you have the right network and the right work and drive and your integrity is on point and things like that, and some level of experience, you can have access to money, or you can at least build partnerships to have access to money and things like that. So before we get too deep, because we can dive into this.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, we could go there for like definitely an hour.
Right. So before we get too deep, give me a snapshot of your childhood. What made Rich who he is, let's say leading up to your first real estate investment?
Oh, okay. So I, one of 4 children.
Awesome.
And so my parents were born lower middle class or upper lower, kind of in that. They both, my mom was an orphan, and then my dad was like literally in a one-stop town. He's the one who got out, kind of thing. And so they raised us, and we moved around a little bit. He was an engineer, super smart guy. Mm-hmm. And so we moved around a bit, and but he's the one who had those 3 brothers that came out of that Pennsylvania town. They were all entrepreneurs, and so he kind of instilled that in me. And I went to college. I studied for engineering at Virginia Tech. Okay. Graduated, didn't exactly get there in 4 years, let's say, but I got there. I was an entrepreneur for a long time. And then I just started buying houses in, mid-30s or something like that.
Okay, cool. So did Virginia Tech bring you to Virginia?
No, my dad did. I've been I was in the D.C. area, Northern Virginia area, since like 85.
Okay.
And then I moved down to Richmond 15 years ago.
Cool. All right. So, and I'm thankful that you did. So, and I'm sure many other people are as well. But the went to Virginia Tech, you get out, you're an engineer.
Yep.
I guess you do that as your career. You're in a corporate, more of a corporate setting or an entrepreneurship?
No, I mean, I have a mind for math and I have a mind for order, but I don't find it enjoyable at all. I worked for General Electric for a very, very brief period of time. I was literally in the middle of a nuclear reactor learning how to work on nuclear reactors. And I looked around, I was like, this is not what I want to do with my life. And then just kind of walked away from corporate like at a pretty young age.
So if you walk away, you have to have some way to continue to make money unless you were well capitalized already from your corporate job. But what did that look like? What did that decision, what was your general financial state, and what was that decision to step away?
Well, I had no financial plan at all.
Okay.
You know, I was super young, had made no money. When I say short, I mean like a summer's worth. And I was a server and a bartender, and I ran a soccer club up in Northern Virginia. So as a soccer coach, you can earn a good dollar amount. And so, but you can't work that many hours because kids aren't available, right? So you kind of cap on how much money you can make. So I made a business of, I think of it as a plumbing business. Like I'd have clubs that would pay me, they would pay $75 an hour for us to come in and coach the recreational kids. And then I'd get a college kid, pay that kid $25 an hour, and then I had operating expenses or whatever. But like that was kind of the margin that I did. Awesome. And I did that all the way up till my late 20s, early 30s.
So you basically chose happiness in doing something that you wanted to do over the corporate world and just making, getting an increase in salary over time?
Yeah, I'm not afraid to dive in and do things. I think it's my personality to go and master something and get it done. And then I kind of lose interest and then I move on to the next thing. I do have a life history of that. And that, by the way, can be difficult in your 20s and stuff like that because there's a lot of failure in that choice of lifestyle. Right. Businesses that I tried that just didn't work, and then ultimately found real estate. And real estate's been an awesome vehicle for that.
How did you find real estate? What was the influence?
So my wife and I, we were married and we were accidental landlords, and that we lived in one house, moved to the other. And she was working at a job. She's working in corporate. Now she's very corporate. She's like Miss Corporate. Like she's awesome. Great pedigree on her background. And so she was working for AOL and they wanted her to move to New York. And we're like, I'm not raising the kids in New York. I don't really want to do that. So she looked for another job. Then she got a job for Capital One that I thought was supposed to be in McLean. And then she kind of sprung it on me one day at dinner. She's like, oh yeah, by the way, it's in Richmond. And I was like, okay. But I've known my wife since I was like 16. And she's like, remember all that stupid stuff that you did and I supported you on? I was like, I'm moving to Richmond. Yeah. And so I did move to Richmond. It's been awesome. I mean, that's been one of the best decisions that's happened in my life. And so, but one of the things to get me down here, to persuade me, was that we could cash flow in Richmond.
Interesting.
And you cannot cash flow in Northern Virginia.
Was it cash flow from a real estate perspective or just cost of living cash flow?
Well, cost of real estate. So it was, okay, can I have a rental? Because in Northern Virginia, like we had a rental, right? And so we had a house and it was getting a good rent for it, but it wasn't cash flowing at all. And that was our vision of, hey, you pay down the amortization schedule, it appreciates over time. Mm-hmm. So really, the model's not available in Northern Virginia to have any type of cash flow. Okay. And then I just was researching and looking around, and you could do cash flowing model here in in Richmond. So she literally made a spreadsheet and she's like, look, we can cash flow on these things. And I'm like, all right, let's go do that.
A lot of people will go the wholesaling, flipping, rentals, and like kind of go through that method. You went straight to rentals and then you built your portfolio, or did you start capitalizing through wholesaling or flipping or a mix of everything?
So we started at rentals. Okay. So we had accumulated some money outside of real estate. Okay. And so that allowed us to be in the position of where we were doing the BRRRR. We were like, we were still using private lenders, and we would do the BRRRR, and then we'd have cash flowing out of it.
Looking back, what mindset shift do you think was critical for you to move from dreaming about real estate or maybe more like a side hustle to making it something that you were actually doing an all-in one? It was like the one thing that clicked. Well, I think private money was when I figured out, hey, how many homes can you buy if it doesn't cost you any money? And then for me, it kind of clicked that one day, and I was like, oh, I could buy all of them. Right. And so if it don't cost any money, I could get them all. And so I realized the power of leveraging money, and then I realized maybe what it could be. And I got very excited, and then we really started to
gobble up houses at the time. And this is 2011, 12, 13.
Okay.
So pretty good time to buy houses.
Right. So you're building this big portfolio, and you said you had some capital, but you were still using other people's money doing the birthing, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you're doing in the real estate investing business, I really encourage you not to use your own money. You should really try to use someone else's money if possible. It certainly allows you to move and grow the business much faster.
And arguably, there's a little bit less risk there, I think, to your own capital if you do that. If the right collateral's in place, the right relationships are in place, you use other people's money, and I think it's definitely a faster way to grow, for sure.
Yeah. And I'll just point out, I'll say this as well. You need your own capital, not because it's less risky, but you need your capital because you need to bail yourself out. So if you deploy all your capital and then something happens, and in the business something always happens, you have to have the resources to be able to like fix the problem, and that often means writing a check.
So what were some things that happened to you as you were growing your portfolio? I assume you have a handful of setbacks. What are maybe some things that happen that other people who might be listening to this can learn from as you're growing your rental portfolio?
Well, when people don't understand the word scale, people think, oh, I'm going to scale the business. And thankfully, it's not as popular to say it anymore. But for a long time, it was just so super popular. And I just want you to think about scaling as I'm going to take a whole bunch of money, I'm going to put it in the corner, I'm going to put lighter fluid on it, I'm going to put it on fire. And that's how you define scaling. And it is something that can really take down a business. And I saw that most people failed during the period of time where they were quote unquote scaling. And I was subject to this on several occasions. And all businesses go through stuff. Some make it, some don't. And most of my problems happened when I was trying to scale. A classic example would be, I want to buy more homes, therefore I'm going to increase the geographical footprint for which I go. But now I'm in a secondary market that I don't know very well. And whether it's getting contractors down there or getting property management down there or having the wrong ARV for the property, lots of mistakes were made. And they were made, as I look back, almost all of them were made while I was like, I'm going to scale. So I buy a house that maybe I shouldn't buy because I'm trying to like move into a territory, and bam, you got like a big loss.
What kind of scale were you doing at the time? I would say, let's say at your peak of like growing this rental portfolio, how many houses were you buying and at what frequency?
Well, houses isn't necessarily all that I would look at in those spots because I was doing deals in my IRAs and I was lending money and doing transactions in the IRAs. And so they definitely represented some of the deal flow. My goal was, and was not a good goal, my goal was to buy 10 a month. Right? Okay. And so I was always like, I'm going to get to 10 a month. And I never got there, by the way. The most I ever did was 8 in a month. And that wasn't by any means my average. And that was always during the scaling pieces, because sometimes now you're getting, for some reason, my idea of like, I have to get 10 a month. So now I'm making decisions that end up being less profitable because I'm trying to make more deals, right? I'm chasing the wrong KPI.
Right.
Yeah. So I try not to think about, because I used to, I try not to think about the number of the deals instead of the quality of the deals.
That's interesting. In property management, I think the old school way of thinking, and it's more of an egotistical way of thinking, is the number of units. So people are like, well, I have 1,000 doors under management. I have 2,000 doors under, I have 3,000. But if you really truly understand property management, you're measuring the value of each door, right? And as a business person, that you could have 100 properties in your portfolio, or you could have 20 in your portfolio or 30 in your like much better properties that are more valuable, that have higher cash flow and things like that, and your life is way better. So to that point, like if you're trying to scale, and it's based on 10 a month versus the value of the deals that you're doing, you probably will get burned. And that's a great lesson, because I think a lot of us do think, I know when I was starting out, I was like, okay, I need X amount of houses and I'll be good. And I didn't think of it as I need a much smaller amount of high performing houses and high cash flow houses and in better areas and things like that.
Yeah, thankfully somebody, and I forget his name, I'm sitting here trying to think of it. He was a mobile home guy out of Texas, and I was on a cruise with him. And we were in a circle of like 10 people, and like, tell us your goals and where are you going to go? And I just remember saying, I'm going to do 10 deals a month. And I've been working for that for a couple of years. And he just laughed. He's like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And he's an older gentleman, and I wanted to punch him in the face. And we just kind of went around it, and he came up to me afterwards like, oh man, I'm so sorry, man. I didn't mean to be a dick. Like, it just shouldn't be the number of homes that you make. It should be the amount of the profit that you make off the homes. Chasing the number didn't make sense. And then he just kind of walked away. He wasn't trying to do anything. And so after I kind of cooled off for a while, that really did change me. I was like, oh my God, that dude's totally correct. And I'm totally wrong. And so
it's a mindset shift. And that's why it's
really
great to have different perspectives in your network, because you need to get slapped in the face every now and then with someone who has a certain experience or story or something that kind of challenges the way that you think. And I think we might get into it a little bit later, but you do that really well. Where again, like online, you are putting out some incredible content online, but you're challenging the way that people are thinking. And I love that. And it's not like super controversial. I mean, to some people it might be, but like, it's just challenging the way people are thinking. It's being open-minded. It's like, hey, let's consider this. What if? And if there weren't people like you that asked those things, then the people, at least in your network or around us, there's no like thought leadership. It's just like we're all kind of like chasing the same thing mindlessly.
I think if people are asking the question, what if, you should listen to them a little bit, because they're talking to you from I always just related to getting punched in the face. And like, once you've been punched in the face enough times, you learn to duck. Right. And you'd be like, let me think through this situation a couple of times before I go into it. And because like the things that you hope don't happen, they do happen.
Yeah. I've learned that a number of times in business, like growing this company. I have a very strong team, some great team members, and they'll come to me with some of these ideas. And I'm like, my answer often is just kind of like, well, what if X, or what if this happens? And they're like, oh, and they can already see where this is going. And I'm like, I've felt that before, so let's just watch out for that. Let's not fall in that hole. Regarding the rentals, and you're scaling this portfolio and you're focused on scale, what kind of team did you have in place to do that, to do the kind of volume that you were doing?
At our height, we had 14 full-time employees. It was, and probably at that height, only 3 of them were local. And then the rest were VAs. I was on to VAs really early. There was a gentleman named Steve Zahala who first turned them on to me. It wasn't in a cruise ship, although it might have been. That was a great network. That Financial Friends group was a great network. So I was on to them early, and we had whole orgs. We had managers for every department, and we had COOs, and I had that all the way up until maybe 2019, and it took me a while to get there. By the way, it didn't start that way. I had a really good, smart person, David Richter, came into my team, and he worked for me as no disrespect to any of the other employees, but he's the greatest of all time. He's the GOAT. He really helped us organize it and set it up, and like he'd come from a big business, and so but then we got our processes down, and then we just kept going.
To have remote team members, it really, in my experience, comes down to, you still have to have a good culture, even with that team, even though they're remote, but it largely comes down to the processes and the systems that you have written down and documented for them to follow. So I would assume you invested some good time in that, and then they were able to follow those processes.
And that was extremely painful. And I'm a driver. I'm a hey, there's a squirrel that ran across their path, I'm just gonna go chase it. And that has been my biggest asset, but also like those getting punched in the face moments. And so it's hard to write those processes. We might talk about it later. AI helps a lot for that stuff now.
For sure.
You just have to suck down and do it, but you cannot, because I'm not a very good manager of people either. I really need someone between me and the rest of the world.
Right.
Because I'll just want to say something once and be like, oh, didn't you just totally read my mind and know exactly what I want? So I have unrealistic expectations sometimes.
It's powerful that you realize that, though, because many people go about their life and try to build teams, but don't realize that maybe they're not the best at being that directly involved with those kind of instructions or leadership or something, but they have a brilliant mind. They know the vision. They know exactly where they want to take this company or organization, but there needs to be someone else to kind of communicate how that works to the team.
I'm always the cog. Like on my team, when my business breaks down, it's always because of it's never what the team did. It really isn't. Right. I'm always screwing things up.
Well, and again, another reason why you're successful is because you're not blaming everything else. And I think if you blame everything else, you lose control of what's actually happening. If you take ownership of it, you can affect change. And so if you do believe that every problem that happens is your own or as a result of something you did or didn't do, then you can progress significantly faster because you then control that outcome. So I love that. I love that comment. So you're scaling these rentals. You mentioned that you're already doing some private lending at this time. Was there a significant shift from I'm not going to do rentals anymore and just focus on private lending? Or was there a significant shift that caused you to just get away from, aside from lending, get away from rentals in general?
Yeah, COVID.
Okay.
So COVID was life-changing for me in a positive way. And so that's hard to say sometimes because, of course, I know how difficult it was on many. But the change that was there for me was, I had in 2019, and I think like most entrepreneurs, I'll draw a mental line in the sand. If I'm worth this amount of money, I'm going to quit. And then, of course, every entrepreneur in the world, as soon as they get to that line, they just move it forward. And so in 2019, I had kind of reached an imaginary line. And so it was on my mind about what to do. And then COVID happened. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I actually kind of thought you've been very kind to me. You said very nice things about it. But I always like to tell the story of, I kind of read the room. And I thought in 2020, particularly in the beginning of 2020, I thought the real estate prices were really going to take a hit. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to shut it down. And I'm not going to buy. Who wants to own more properties? And of course, it ran like 50% in the next 5 years. I'm like, I got that one wrong. Now, I had a large rental portfolio, so I did okay. Right. But like, I mean, like even when you think you got it, you don't got it. And so always like to remind people that story. I got that one wrong. But we shut down in 2020, and then when you're in a lot of projects, you don't realize it at the time. Like it's on a book sheet. It's on the book somewhere, but you have a lot of money out, 20,000 here, 15 there, 20 there. And like, so then it all kind of, when you shut everything down, it all kind of comes in.
Right.
And so now I had this big chunk of money and I was like, okay, well, I got to do something with it. And then I started to really get serious about lending money.
Yeah. Putting it to work. When you stepped back from rentals, did you sell 100% or
No.
80% or so? But you sold a vast majority of it, or maybe 50%.
Yeah, maybe around 50%. It should be about right. And I'm still selling. As people move out of the homes, I try to make the decision of okay, especially if some homes I've owned since 2011, 2012, and it's a long run and the market's done great. And so I can either take out of pocket 15 grand and fix it back up for the next person, or I can cash out, take all that money and then go lend it.
So you have I'm going to butcher this if I try to repeat it, so I'll let you say it, but you have a theory that at some point owning rental property doesn't make sense at some not as a whole, but like, let's say you've owned the house 15 years, like just talking about one singular asset, you've owned it for 15 years. At some point, your return just gets less and less and less, right?
Yeah.
Talk us through that mindset and, because I think that's an unconventional way. People think the longer I hold it, the better this looks. And in your mind, you say, hey, the longer you hold it, actually your return is lessening and there's better things you can do with your money. Help us understand that.
I just feel like I graduated through something. And ironically, some of those people that I took those cruises with told me about it, had told me 15 years ahead that it would happen. And they were right. The older you get, you kind of end up simplifying your life and you end up in paper. But I'll just use the example. First of all, when I talk about these things, sometimes people think I'm anti-owning rentals, and I'm not. I still own rental. They're still an important part of the process. That is how I got a bunch of wealth. But now I look at it, so like that, the idea of the infinite return, people talk about, I'm going to do the BRRRR, an infinite return. Okay, well, let's talk about it. So let's talk about the return on the wealth of that. So like it's an infinite return for one day. On that one day, you go from, I'm into the project for zero, and I get a crazy return. I get $25,000 in equity or whatever it is. That's great on that day, but every day after that, it goes down, right? So let's say you make, what's a good number here? And I should know this number. Okay, so the first day you go in and you're earning $6,000 a year, right? But you're into that deal for you have $30,000 in equity. You have $30,000 in equity in that deal, and then that was the instant that you got from the BRRRR. You earned $6,000 that year. I own a lot of rentals. That's a pretty good number, by the way, $6,000 a year per house. So now on that day, you're earning, on return on your wealth, you're earning 20%. $6,000 for $30,000 of wealth. That's the equity that's in the home. But every day after that, as you pay down the amortization schedule and it appreciates, the equity grows. And so the numbers largely look the same because although our rental rates go up, so do our expenses. Our insurance is up. Our taxes are up. The cost of the materials to fix the damage is up. And so Now I'm still earning about $6,000 off of that property, but I have $100,000 of equity in the property. Now I'm only earning 6% return on my wealth. If you can have a way that you can earn higher than 6%, it's at least worth the consideration in your mind. Okay, what should I do? Because the idea is, hey, we're worth $1 million. How do I get to 10 million? And it is that you have to get the highest rate of return on your wealth that you can. And rentals become inefficient. That was a long answer.
No, that was an awesome explanation. So then you are now focused. You're focused on a number of things, but one of the things that you talk about and you're heavily into now is private lending.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into that. You have a really interesting way of thinking. You have an interesting product that you talk about. When you started private lending, were you surprised at anything when you became a lender instead of the borrower?
Yeah, it's really scary over here sometimes. Like the way I borrow money is very different than the way I lend money. And I can at least say that with a smile. Because when you want to borrow the money, you want to have the least amount of money in the deal, you want to have the lowest percentage point, and you want like all the construction money up front. And then when you're lending the money, you're like, okay, you have to have like 10% down. You're going to have to make payments. I'm going to charge you $1 million for this loan, and you can't have the construction until basically you're done. So you definitely switch to the other side of the table, and it definitely gives you a different perspective.
That's a great way to put it. You've talked about principles that investors should follow when they're working out of an IRA. Now, I assume I shouldn't skip too far ahead. So when you lend, it's not, I would say the majority of what you're lending is not cash that you have. It's your IRA, correct? 401k.
It's a combination of both. I'm a real proponent of the IRAs, and self-directing them, of course, but IRAs and Roth IRAs. And if we talk about it, I will just say the word IRA, but I do mean all of them. The 401ks,
correct.
HSAs, the Coverdales, like you should be taking advantages of those as much as you can. They are in the tax code for a reason. The government is encouraging you to get there and understand it. The more money you make, the less that they'll have to take care of you at the end. So that's a relationship that works out well for everybody.
So you're lending largely tax-free. Like your returns are largely tax-free at least now, depending on the
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say largely, but at least half, you know. Okay, so I would say that there's a balance between the two.
How do you set that balance? How do you determine that balance?
Well, when you're lending, you just look at your bank account and see how much is there, and you just want to get it out the door.
Got it.
And so money sitting in the accounts is bad, which is a totally different mindset than when I was flipping, right? Because when you're running a business and that number starts going to zero, you're like, oh my God, like this is the end. And lending, it's the other way. You're like, man, I got a whole bunch of money sitting in the account. This is the end. And so it's a weird mindset change.
I've seen several of your presentations. I've been to several of your presentations. I've been to your meetup. We talk about doubling your 401k or IRA each year, every couple of years or something like that. Walk us through a strategy and why that's important and how that can compound.
Yeah. So I tell people that in general, you should be able to double your IRA every year up until it gets to be like $100,000. And once you get to have $100,000 in there, it becomes more complicated. And of course, the more money you have, the harder it is to move. And I want everybody to just think about that in terms of real estate transactions or real estate investments. I bet that most of your viewers have seen an investment that was done that made $50,000. And so that's the hardest one to do. And that's the one where you go from 50,000 to 100,000. But everybody has seen one of those transactions. And so there are certainly transactions where you can make 25,000 and certainly 12,000. And so I just go back to you can deposit $6,000 a year, and that's because it's $500 a month. You could just whatever. But that $6,000 should be able to go to 12, and then that 12 should be able to go to 25, and then 25 to 50, and 50 to 100. And that should kind of be your goal.
And so you're lending, like as a lender, this is obviously not just by lending to some extent. So let's say you have $4,000 in your account. It's going to be unattractive to lend that to some degree. You might be able to find to put that to work somehow. What are some other ways that you can
when you have small dollars amounts in your IRAs, you have to bring the deal. And the deal is the hard part, and the money is the easy part. And so I'll give an example. Let's say you have $6,000. You make that first deposit. It doesn't matter. And what you can do is you can find a partner. And you can negotiate the partner in the way that you're going to split up the deal. Everything is negotiable. And what we have to do is you have to be fair. You have to make sure you follow all the rules. You have to do a lot of things, but it's certainly there. And this is the one I really like, is that you put your money in the deal, and that's important, right? You'd bring more than the deal, but you have to put all your $4,000 in there, not all of it, like but $3,500 or whatever. And so, but what you should do then is negotiate with your partner in the manner in which you receive the funds. And here's a good way to do it. Let's say that you're earning, let's say you find a rental and you can get someone to come in and be the cash for it. And that what you tell them is that you're going to take all the cash flow for 2 years. You can take all the cash flow for 2 years, and then they can have the equity and the cash flow after that. And that's what the price is going to be for you bringing the deal. And to some people, that would be a very attractive deal. And in a way that you might be walking away from a little bit more money as the person who, like, maybe you could flip it and make a couple more bucks somewhere else. But like, you bring the deal and you use it to put the money in your IRA. And so that you take $1,500 a month for 2 years, that was at $36,000 that just from that $4,000 you could make. So you're making $18,000 a year. And so that's just one example of the way to do it. Another way that almost everybody just ignores is just go ahead and pay the tax. And that, you can do a real estate transaction. You have to be there are a lot of rules, but you can do a flip with somebody else's money inside your IRA. It's just taxable. But if it's like a big hit where you're like, wow, I'm going to make $60,000 on this flip, well, go in and go ahead and pay the tax that you're going to have to pay on that. So if you make $60,000, you're going to take $20,000, you're going to pay the IRS. You're going to pay the IRS the money anyway if you did it in your LLC, by the way. And so, but now it's sitting in your IRA. So just do it legally, ethically, like follow the rules. But there are plenty of ways to do those transactions and boost your money up. But you got to have a small dollar amount. You got to have the deal.
I'm guilty of that last one, of kind of ignoring that last one. Just pay the tax, right? Because I have the one smaller dollar retirement account that's just kind of sitting there. And I'm like, all right, what should I do with it? And I kind of delay, what should I do with it? And I'm like, could just do a deal and just pay the tax and just get it up to speed.
Yes.
And then it's going to be more attractive to pay attention to.
Yeah. Once they get up to 100,000, then they become a lot easier you earn less return. And by the way, you should be less risky. Mm-hmm. When you have a small amount of money in the IRA to begin with, then, and by the way, I'm not a tax attorney. Don't listen to me. Right. I don't know what I'm talking about. But like, you should consider the wealth of your portfolio and say, what's the risk that I can tolerate? And so when you don't have a lot of money to lose, that's a reasonable time to be risky. Right. When you have a lot of money to lose, that's not a good time to be risky.
We'll get into risk soon, because that's a good thing for us to talk about deal structure and how we're going to structure these loans, or how you would structure loans when people bring their money to you. But you mentioned Coverdales. Mm-hmm. That, from my understanding, is a way to basically accumulate money tax-free for your children. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What's the general kind of like definition of the Coverdale, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so the Coverdale is the Coverdale is the name of it. What everybody always calls it, I can't remember.
Is it just for education?
It's just for educational purposes. Right. So there's a bunch of rules on it, and one of the hard rules on it, and again, the numbers change every year, so forgive me if I'm off by a couple hundred, but it's around $2,500 per year that can be donated to each one of the children inside the Coverdale. Like the 529 is very state specific. It's got a bunch of rules, and they manage, like, i.e. the state manages the 529. But in a Coverdale, it can be like an IRA where you can self-direct it. And so there are some income limitations. If I earn too much money, I cannot contribute to my own kids' Coverdale. But if grandma and grandpa don't have a high income, they could contribute to the Coverdale. And so, but you can do the same idea of, hey, when your kids are young, you can open up the Coverdales and you can find a way to do a real estate transaction and earn a chunk of money. And then over the course of, as they grow up, that money compounds, and like you move it another way. And early in their lives, by just diverting one deal, you basically pay for their college. And then that money just kind of builds. And if they don't go to school, the Coverdale, I don't think the Coverdale goes to an IRA. I can't remember, but then it has to be passed down perhaps to a sibling or something like that, or a nephew or a grandchild, or it can be distributed.
That's a powerful thing to think about. And I have a 3-year-old and 4-year-old. So I'm starting to think, I've kind of have it in my brain of when they hit 5, I'm going to start thinking about like financial benefits and stuff for them and things like that. But speaking of kids, I think you have recently kind of challenged the pass your rentals to your kids idea. What alternative why do you challenge that thought? And then what alternative strategies should people be thinking about?
So, yeah, a great question. This is just my opinion. And so, but I've bought a lot of houses, and a lot of the houses that I bought were from people who did not acquire the equity. And what I mean by that is that in one way or another, somebody passed away and left the house. And so whether it's at a tax sale, a foreclosure, like an abandon, or like they can't get the tenants out, a bad landlord situation, whatever it is, that oftentimes the people that are handed that equity don't know how to manage it. And so I know that a lot of real estate investors worked for a lot of years to grow the equity and ended up giving it to my family because I came in and I bought the property and I did something with it. And so I think that a lot of parents take the tact of, I'm going to try to make my kids like the thing that I like.
Yep.
And so because we like the chaos of being landlords and like being an entrepreneur, doesn't mean our kids will at all.
Right.
And I've seen it where it's a burden. And so when it's a burden, and then a lot of the money goes away. And so what I encourage people to do is we could all drop dead at any moment, and there's really not a whole lot you could do about that. I own rentals right now. If I drop dead, that would be a problem, not only for myself, but hopefully my family. But you can, as you age, you can begin to turn it into paper. And what I mean by paper is I mean mortgages. I do a lot of lending, which tends to be a short-term paper situation where I lend it out and get it back fairly quick. And you can also do it in terms of long-term, where you can lend that money out on 20 years that just represents cash flow. And then if the child can make the decision, the child can say, okay, I'll continue taking this $600 a month for the next 20 years, or they can take that note. It's more liquid than people think, and they could sell it they'll sell it at some discount, but like maybe a 10% discount, not a huge discount. And versus like if they're going to sell it to a wholesaler, they're going to sell it at a 50% discount.
Right.
And so, I just encourage people to think about that.
It's good. I like that. We need different perspectives in the industry versus the same thing that everyone's always talking about, especially with changing markets and interest rates. And there's so many things that are happening. Real estate investing is not something. I've been in a short game, and I can already tell, talking to people who are way more experienced than I am, that it's fluid. And we need to adapt with it, and we need to learn, and we need to see where this thing is going. So talk to me about a loan structure. So back to private lending. From a lending perspective, How do you typically structure a loan? Are you raising money? What position are you in? And then who are you raising money from? Like just a kind of an overall outlay of what you're doing as a private lender.
Okay. I structure mine as a note and deed of trust. And so we're in Virginia. That's where I do almost all my lending. I would say I do 95% of it in Virginia. So we are a note and deed of trust. So I lend with a note and deed of trust. Now I fractionalize my notes, which means that I have a percentage of a note, someone else has a percentage of a note. I also do it where we use an intercreditor agreement, and we do it where there's an agent and we only take it in one entity. So we do it in both ways. But essentially combining the money and lending it out together.
And you're doing it whether with your capital or your retirement account, and they're doing it either with their capital and their retirement account. How are you finding these lending partners?
Money is the best commodity in the world. And you can literally walk into any room in the entire world, in the planet, and says, who wants money? And everybody raises their hand. And now you're just negotiating. And my personal negotiation would be just on real estate. But certainly people lend in a whole bunch of different manner, but you just have to tell people you have money to lend and be a nice person and do what you say you're going to do. I really do think 95% of business is answering the phone and doing what you say you're going to do.
Right.
And so if you do those things often enough, the business will come.
So speaking about doing what you say you're going to do, how do you structure these deals to look out for your lending partners?
Which one is because I really have two partners in the deal. I have what I consider my borrower is one of those people in the deal. And then I have my lazy money, which is
lazy money.
I call it lazy money, which is and I'll say the way I structure it. My borrower typically borrows at 20%. And like everybody has the way that they do it. I'm 12% and 4 points, or, I'm 10%, but 4 points and then 2 origination fee or whatever it is. I'm just going to say a professional money lender in general lends at about 20%. Everybody slices it a little different.
Right.
And so, but let's just use that number. So the borrower takes, they're going to borrow at 20%. So I go to my lazy money partners, and these, for me, these are the partners that I was using when I was flipping homes, because I was buying a lot of properties. And then in 2020, I was like, I'm out. Take it easy, guys. It was great moving your money for the last 10 years, but I'm out.
Right.
They weren't happy about that. Ironically, like when you're moving someone's money after a while, they're like, Mr. Lennon, I'm used to getting a check.
Right.
And so, so I went back to those same people and I started using their money. And so everybody does it different. For me, I only do it to move my own money. And so I'm not worried about just earning a couple points off it and putting those points in my back pocket or something like that. What I'm trying to do is grow the return on my money so that my money compounds and grows fast. And so my general idea is I am in deals for around 50%. And so I lend it at 20%, and my average loan's $200,000. So I'm lending it over here at $200,000 at 20%. I'm going to put in $100,000, and then my lazy partner puts in $100,000. Now my lazy partner is only going to get 10% return on their money. And so I'm going to earn 20% on my money, plus an arbitrage on their money of like that extra 10%. And now, so I earn 30% of my money. And so what I do to protect them, though, is I say, and by the way, this is a much better protection for them than it was when they were previously lending to me as a flipper. And it is that I take a first loss position. So I underwrite a deal at 70% minus ARV plus 10% down, plus I take basically the next 30%, which gives them a loan to value of around 30% for a double-digit return. And so I don't know that you can get a much more secure spot, right? So nothing's safe. Things go wrong, right? And if you don't have your insurances correctly, or the LLC didn't exist because you didn't check the state to make sure it was registered, then so there's nothing safe. But man, it's a really secure spot. And so when you structure it like that, you get plenty of people who want to give you money at that structure. The truth is, I haven't taken anybody's money in a bunch of years, just because I'm happy with who my partners are.
You mentioned 30% to you return and then 10% to your partners. I first like that I watch your content, I listen to your content, I see what you post online. It's really a wealth of information, but I love how transparent you are about that. Now I know you can be transparent about that for one reason, because if you're making your lazy money 10% returns, that's awesome. Yeah. That's hard to get. And so even if you're saying, hey, I'm making 30%, but you get 10%, you're still going to get money all day. Hence the 500,000, I need $500,000. And someone's like, hey, if I give you $500,000, if I make 10% on that and get that back, like they're going to be happy, right? And so I like that you're open and transparent about the returns that you get, but those are some phenomenal returns. Yeah. It's incredible the way that you have it structured.
Certainly it's an attractive return. And, I am very transparent, and you're not my partner if you're going to be mad at me for making 30%.
100%.
Because I'll be like, hey, you can tune into the Facebook group, you can listen, you can learn yourself how to go make 30%. Do you want to go learn how to do it? Right. And do you want to take that first position risk? If you do, I'll help you. We can be boys, or like we can be friends. But like, if you're going to be in this position, I think I believe in my product, and I just think I'm offering a good product. So I'm happy to tell people.
That's a good way to put it too, is you're like, hey, look, I'm taking the risk. Yeah. I'm setting you up to be in a wonderful position. And you're probably, I would guess, you're sourcing the deal. Like, you are connecting all these people, all the deals are coming to you, the bars are coming to you, and you're figuring, so you're doing, whether you or your team or something like, you're putting the work, the administrative effort, the experience, the knowledge to create these returns. You're bringing everything together, and there's a ton of value in that.
Yeah, and they have to be involved. So you generally bring the deal. Mm-hmm. Again, like, you deserve more for bringing the deal. And yeah, we do. They're called lazy money for a reason, because they like to be lazy. They're off living their best life. They're likely where I'll be. Like, that is, by the way, my personal retirement strategy. Awesome. I'll give I'll be lazy money to 10 different people in 10 different cities, and be happy with my 10%. At a 30% loan to value.
Nothing wrong.
And then, like, I'm in Italy, don't call me. Right. That's right. Lazy money is the spot to be.
What are some things that passive investors should look out for when they're approached by wrap lenders?
I think the amount of skin in the game for almost everything matters. And so, for example, when I have a borrower, I make sure the borrower has 10% in that game. And that's probably not enough for a lending partner. Like, you don't want to be in a deal where you put up $200,000 and your wrap lender put in $20,000, and then they get the points up front, so they get most of their money back almost right away. It's not to disparage the wrap lender, because they're good people that want to make money off their, like, they're entitled to do that. But like, there is a risk there of like, you have a lot more skin in the game than the other person. And so I like when you're lending and you're taking to partners, and I think you just have to have significant skin in the game. And by the way, it doesn't have to be 50%. You know, I'm happy sometimes to be in a deal for like 25% as well. And so that, you know, when you're doing it that way, your return's like 50%.
Right.
And so there's nothing wrong with being into a deal for less, but you have to watch it. You have to make sure that they have enough skin that they're going to stay with the project when things go bad.
Have you ever said no to money? Like, of course, you've turned down borrowers because the deal didn't look good or something like that. Have you ever said no to money coming to you and then why would you turn down a lazy money partner?
Yeah, I've definitely turned down lazy money, and then I've been in relationships with people that it got bad. And by bad, I mean they were too much of an emotional or administrative burden. You know, sometimes people they're too nitpicky, and they're too much, and they always want what's ever good for them. And so those people, whatever they want, and then we give them whatever they want, and then we just don't use them again. And I definitely have had those people.
Right.
And there are some people that have approached me that say, "Oh, I want to move money with you," and I just politely say, "I'm filled up right now. I really don't have the need for money."
Right.
But no, you're that partner is super crucial, because you might be on Facebook one day saying, "I need $500,000," and you want everybody to be like, "Oh, I'll give you that. I'll give you that 500."
Right. And the reason people do that is if you can be a good person, have good deals, but you can't be solidly churning out great deals and great opportunities for people if you're tied down to someone who is emotionally attached to things or an administrative burden.
Yes.
It's going to affect you in your business.
And administrative burden is probably the biggest one.
For sure.
Hey, are you gonna wire the money on Friday? Okay. Hey, it's 4 p.m. on Friday. Did you wire the money? Oh, you're gonna do it on Monday? Oh, okay. All right. Well, now I got to go back and I got to look like a schmuck to everybody.
Right.
And so like that's a problem.
Right. I assume bars are similar. Like you're obviously not going to take it's up to deal with a bar if the deal doesn't look good. Like if you've analyzed the deal and it doesn't look like a good deal, but borrowers in the same capacity, you might turn down working with a borrower, even if they have a beautiful deal, if they are an administrative burden or some sort of emotional attachment.
Yeah. If they're chaotic, if you're chaotic and you can't stick to your own timelines, that can be frustrating. And one would be, one that'll happen is like, hey, can you close by Friday? Okay, yeah, I can do. We're going to close on Friday. Yes, we're closing on Friday, and then you pull all the strings. And by the way, as soon as you commit to money, the money kind of comes off the table. So now it's earning 0% return until you deploy it. And then you've asked you arrange for the money, and then it comes out on Friday. You're like not anywhere close to where you need to be ready to close, and you'll be lucky to close like a week or 2 weeks later. That shows a lack of experience and a lack of understanding of the other side of the table.
Do you have any experience requirements, or do you just really vet that person if this is their first deal and really like hold their hand and help them understand expectations and how this is going to go?
So I don't have any problem with lending to someone for the first time. And someone lent to me for the first time. And okay, in my estimation, those people are sometimes better than the people certainly that are scaling. And so the people that are scaling and they're like, oh, they're the ones up. Sometimes they're the ones with the microphone in the front of the room at your RIA talking about what a great business they have. But you've lent them on 3 houses that are just sitting there for 4 months because they haven't gotten anything. And that first time borrower woke up at 6 a.m. in the morning, was the first one at Home Depot, and is like ripping stuff out of the wall and getting at it.
Right.
So I lend to them both, but I don't say one is better than the other. I lend solely based on the asset and the security of my position. Another example would be like the borrower says, because I love real estate agents. I don't want to diss any real estate agents out there, but sometimes when they get an investor, they'll tell the investor, "Oh, you can sell it for $325," and I'll look at the comps and I'll be like, "You're looking at like $300." Yep. And of course, that agent is incentivized to say that you can sell it for $325. They're very good agents. I'm not saying agents go out and do that on purpose, but like that happens a little bit. They're trying to make it look good, and so I'll go to the bar and say, "Hey, look, I'm sorry. I can only give you. It's only $300. That's all I'm seeing. Like, I'm sorry." But if you, borrower, if you want to come with more money, if you want to make up that delta of $25,000, so now it's your risk and not my risk, I'll lend you the money. And sometimes the borrower is like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. They believe in the project. They've got deep pockets. They're being responsible. I'm in. And then, but other times they're like, well, no, I don't have that much money. And you're like, okay, well, then I'm not going to take the risk with you.
Right.
I love you. Bring me the next one.
Right. And so you're keeping your risk percentage the exact same, regardless
Yes.
if that ARV is off or you're in disagreement. We have something very similar in property management, as you can imagine. We will have realtors that work with investors, maybe for the first time or second time or newer to working with investors. They want to make the sale. And so, yes, this property will rent for $4,500 a month, in some neighborhood of Richmond or something like that. Yeah. And then they come to us and they say, this is our, expectation. I got this realtor telling me this and that. We're like, hey, that's not even close. And then, but they've already bought the house, or they're closing, or they're past their diligence period or something like that. We see that fairly often. And I actually have somewhat of a mission that I'm sort of developing of like, we moved into a new office and we have a larger training space that can accommodate a lot more people. And I have a mission of just having free training classes for local realtors that want to work with investors and say, here's the terminology, here's some flashcards, here's what you should be doing to make the sale. Here's how you can work with investors and really help them buy assets that are in line with their goals, and they're going to be successful, and they're going to come back and buy 10 more if you do this, versus selling them one, getting that money for the transaction and losing their business. And the investor might just fall out after that of investing. So I really want to sort of, we see that a lot in our industry, and we have to correct things when that happens. Oftentimes, unfortunately, it comes across as like, well, we as property managers don't know, because they have that relationship with the realtor, the investor does.
Yeah.
And so by the time they get to us, we don't know what we're talking about, right? That realtor knows everything about the market, the rental market, and how everything works, what tenant demographic, and how long it'll take to get leased. And then when they come to us and we tell them, based on 1,000+ units in the same market, this is what we think is going to happen, it's a little different. And they're like, I'll find a different management company that will agree with it, which is not how it works.
Yeah.
Or they end up really struggling because they have that asset and it didn't perform like they were supposed to. So,
and I just want to be clear, because real estate investors are difficult to work with as well. I want to make sure that we're not saying the realtors are the problem here, because it is the investor, it's their money, it's their call. Right. They're supposed to be responsible for it. The real estate agent is a tool for them.
I think what we're talking about is maybe less than 5% of realtors.
Yeah.
Because I know some absolutely competent and amazing realtors or real estate agents, whatever your classification, but real estate agents that are crushing it for investors and buyers and sellers and stuff like that we work with day in and day out. And I actually still lean on some of the more experienced ones to help me out, And so, but I do think there is a small fraction that just care about the transaction, and investors need to look out for that.
Yeah, I think it's probably in every industry.
Of course. So I would assume on vetting your partners, whether it be the borrower or the lazy money, that you lean on data, a mix of data and intuition.
Intuition, not as much. I do business assuming everybody's a criminal. And I know I sound a little harsh, but it's because I've been around for a while, and there are people that I knew, liked, and respected that ended up being criminals. And that was hard for me. And this was not when I was new to the business, being some people that were mentors that ended up being criminals. I'm like, oh my God. So I got advice from an attorney once, and he was kind of being his snarky self, and he says, you can do business with a criminal if you want. It's just better to know ahead of time and not find out halfway through. And okay, I didn't know what that meant at the time, but what that really came down to for me ended up being really good processes. Of my process is good enough that if you're a criminal, you're not going to get through my process, because I don't trust myself to have that intuition about you. And so it's things like how you do the draw schedules on stuff, and making sure that you can do business with a criminal, because he opened my eyes, you can do business with a criminal, right. Just don't figure it out later. Don't trust them. Oh, here's all the construction money. And then oh, wow, they were a criminal. That would be hard. So for that reason, I'm asset, it's asset for me. Am I okay owning the asset? And if I'm okay with owning the asset with the amount of money and my security, we do a basic background check on people. I want to make sure you're not in Google and a wanted person, but I just know people that pass every background check that I would never do business with them. So you just won't know until you know.
Networking has clearly been very effective for you and likely has played a pretty good role in your success, at least current. I mean, again, go back to the I need $500,000 by Friday. You have a incredible, arguably one of the best in Richmond ring mastermind networks, like meetup group once a month, plus some other like spinoff groups and events that you guys do. How do you define networking? What do you think is effective in networking, and how has it paid off for you?
Just be the generous expert and just help. Just help, tell your story, tell your truth, and don't like sugarcoat it for people in the industry, but help people, and don't charge them a lot of money. And that stuff really comes back to you. And that's been very, very effective for me.
How do you do it without overextending yourself? Because you're everywhere. You're online at a certain point of time almost every day. You have the real estate meetup, which is not an easy task. It probably feels like an easy task to show it once a month, but it's not to host it. You have content that you're putting out, and you go to these other networking events and groups, and you host these other events for your community. One of the reasons you have a good networking group is largely like the information and the content you put out, but it's the people that show up. And you have incredible people in your network. I mean, they are abundance mindset. Some of them are brand new. Some of them are very experienced. They all help and support each other from what I've seen. It's a really good environment. It's like I kind of, you walk into, I might have told you this before, but I talk to a lot of new investors, or people who have never invested before. And one of the first pieces of advice I give them, there's really two things that I say. One is they need to subscribe to Richmond BizSense, and that is the newsletter that tells you a lot of happenings that happen in Richmond real estate. And two is they need to go to the Ring Meetup group. And the reason I feel comfortable saying the Ring Meetup group is because I know a bunch of the people there, and I know that they're good people, and they're going to take care of new people that walk in the door. They're not going to embarrass them. They're not going to put them on the spot. They're not going to be egocentric or anything like that. How do you think you've developed that group of people? I mean, you were largely the leader, and I know you're going to discredit that, but by way of hosting that meetup and kind of owning that group, you're the leader of that. How have you cultivated that sort of team?
I had some good mentors who did the same for me.
Mm-hmm.
And, in a lot of ways I got lucky in life. There's no question about it. And certainly several times my business could have gone the wrong way. And so I feel for the other people. I don't have this belief that I have to be right and it's, my way of doing it. I don't know. I don't ask a lot of anybody. I just try to give it away. And I think when you do that, I mean, I've been known in that Ring group to be like, oh, here's my financials and here are all my KPIs. Mm-hmm. And like, we're direct competitors and I'm just showing you my books.
Right.
And, what happens is the people that really respond to that stuff are the people that want to be your friends. And so when you give that stuff away, you attract other people that have that same mindset. And then you end up just being just part of a group.
Awesome. And doing deals with them too. And I remember you at one of your talks, you said, hey, do you want X amount of years of experience? Do you want all my paperwork and all my documents and everything that I have ever built? Do a deal with me. And I'll hold your hand and I'll walk you through it and stuff. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing to say. And again, like I'm probably undermining it, but there are so many cool things that you're doing that's making an impact. Do you consider yourself a coach? Like, do you, I can't remember, do you actually have like students, or you do any coaching formally?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
I thought you did. What's a common misconception that your students come in with when they're trying to learn from you?
Man, I don't know. I've never really thought about it that way. The misconception is, well, one of them is that money is hard. No, money's easy.
There you go.
Like that's one of them. But now I just pretty much coach lenders. I teach other people
Okay.
how to be lenders. And so I think that they have this preconceived notion sometimes that it's all going to be perfect all the time and that their paperwork is, everything's going to be perfect. And it's not. Real estate is a mess. And whether it's when you're closing when you're supposed to close, or deals falling through, or like wires getting screwed up, or there's just super messy. And I think that people come in thinking that the attorneys have it all together, and they don't. Mm-hmm. And I think they come in thinking the real estate agent has it all together, and they don't. And they think, the real estate investor has it all together, and they don't. And so I think that is surprising to a lot of people as they become lenders. They're like, wow, I'm still going to send this $200,000 to this person who's asked me the same 6 questions in a row because I can't read an email. And you're like, yeah, it'll be fine. Just send the $200,000. That's a hard thing to do sometimes. Right. It is, because you're like, It's all a mess out there.
That is a really interesting point that you've experienced that same thing. So again, like growing this business, I assume that all attorneys knew exactly what they were doing and knew everything about everything, right? And so it took me a little bit of pain where I was like, wait, this person is supposed to give me advice on how to, not lose millions of dollars or not get sued for that or whatever. And so then you really learn to build the right team around you. And that experience is very valuable. But yeah, CPAs, insurance, like you need all these people on your team, and there are very good people that do it, but it's really painful if you don't know where to go for those very good people.
Yeah. And even if you run into a really good person, they might not be a really good person for you.
Right.
And it takes a while to put that team together. And I'll just say, it really isn't a team. You have to know it yourself. Like, you have to understand the rules and the laws, and you have to understand your own documents. You actually have to read your documents. It seems to me that would be helpful, that a lot of people don't do. And like, oh, did you read it? No. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, you have to be the professional, and regardless of what piece of it, whether you're the property management piece, right, or you are the flipper piece, or you're the lender piece, or the agent piece,
So when people get started in real estate, there's a great deal of them have, paralysis by analysis. Do you see that in lending too?
Yes.
Where people overanalyze deals and won't ever lend money?
Yes. Yeah, it should be like I don't want to swear, but it should be either a hell yes or a hell no.
Yeah.
Like, are you excited about doing it? You should be able to see that right away.
Right.
You should be able to say, wow, this is great. And so, you should have your formula out, and there are some people that are nervous about it. And you know what? That's a healthy thing, and that's an okay thing. Part of what we do in the group is try to talk them through that. We don't tell people how to invest or where to go and what to do, but we give them an outlet to talk about their concerns. And it really helps people motivated and like execute.
Awesome. What do you see as the next phase of your journey? Like, you're shifting, you're adapting, you've done all kinds of stuff up until this point. Is there something ahead that you are aiming your focus and energy on? I know you talk a lot about AI. What are you kind of like interested in getting into beyond lending?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely interested in AI. I mean, I know you've heard me talk about it, but like, it'll probably be run by robots in 5 years. So it's like a 5-year race to get as much wealth as you can. I do think it's intentional the way our I'll just use the word government, but it's not really government, but we're not taught as Americans, and really this is anywhere in the world, like how to really do money, and how the money works and how taxes work and all that stuff. We don't talk about it. Anyway, so I've become passionate about teaching people that subject, because I think money, and I said it a couple of times, money is probably easier than you think if you're out there with the scarcity mindset of it. The harder thing to do is the effort that it takes to go out and move the money. If you can move my money, you and I will be the bestest of friends. I'll give you all the money you want. And there's a million of me. Yeah, I wish people understood that, and I feel bad because I think people feel trapped. And I don't think it's as hard as people think. You have to go out there and you have to work hard at it. And when you don't have money, you have to hustle to find the opportunity. Then you're going to trade your time in terms of like, you're just going to go work and you're not going to get compensated for a while. And by the way, that's what owning rentals is as well. You're going to go work for a while and they don't make any money for a while, but eventually that does pay off handsomely.
So what's more fulfilling to you now, the chase, the impact, or the legacy?
I'm slowing down on the chase. I don't think I'm to legacy yet because I haven't stepped off the field. And I do find the impact rewarding. I've been doing a lot of like one-on-one coaching the last couple of years. I don't do it locally because I'm tired of setting up competition in my own market. But but watching people attain that like freedom, is very rewarding. And it takes a little bit of time to figure out the lending thing. But when you can show somebody who's created a little bit of something for themselves, hey, what does that look like if you can make 30 to 50% returns on that? Now let's play that out for like 5 years or play it out for a decade. What does that look like? And watching people accomplish that, and it's really rewarding.
That's impressive. I mean, I came from a fitness background, being in the fitness industry, and you would write programs and work alongside people and help them with their nutrition to some extent. You would personally train them through their workouts and watch their struggles and watch the days they don't even want to show up to the gym and they kind of drag themselves in. you see this, and then over the course of a year, you see their agility and strength and health and everything just start coming into play. And it's really rewarding, because then you see the energy and you see the thought process of like how it's affecting their family and their relationships and their business. And we have gyms, and then we have people like you and other experienced investors that can help people, like gyms to help people get in shape. And then we have people like you, like experienced investors that are sharing information and helping people understand finances, because it is not in schools. And I have a theory that like it's not in schools because if people knew that how money worked, they probably wouldn't be teaching. And of course, like we need teachers. We love teachers. There's nothing wrong with teaching. We need more of them. But if you could imagine if every teacher knew about financial freedom and that money, $50,000 or $500,000 is available like that, it would be really hard to maintain your teaching job. And so I think the word needs to get out that this life is possible with a little bit of effort, knowledge, and experience and networking. And I appreciate you for not just building what you built and then stepping off and not sharing any of that and not making the impact that you're making, because I can see what you're doing is pretty awesome. We've talked about your networking groups. We've talked about your coaching, but I want to put a name to those to make sure people know where they can go to either meet you, get in touch with you, join the networking group, the Ring Mastermind, find you on Facebook, take part in your coaching. Is there a simple link or two or a handle or anything like that where people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the podcast is the best way to find me.
Okay.
So I have podcasts on Apple and Spotify. It's called Growing the Money, and you can just go find it. And we're up to 40 some episodes. We put out 2 a week.
Okay.
And also richlennon.com. So if you're interested in, there's a button on there. It's like the Smarter Wealth Blueprint. Like I'll break down in like a 7 or 8 page exactly how I do my notes. And like, this is exactly what I mean by a fractionalized note. This is how it works. This is why you get the returns that you get it. Like you can just download it. It's free. So just richlennon.com.
Awesome. Any final thoughts?
No, Matt, I really appreciate it. I really had a good time. I mean, thanks a lot. I got to talk about myself a little bit today. And yeah, thank you for what you do. Thank you for being a good property manager. I know you know that I've sent you some business, but I don't send business lightly. It's because I only send it to people I know do a good job. I appreciate it. And many thanks to what you're doing in this community, the impact you're making. There are many investors that are living a different life now because of you. And I will assume that they're going to continue to grow their portfolios and then give back because of the example that you're giving. So thank you so much for taking time out to join this podcast and share the gospel of lending and building rentals and real estate investing in Virginia. I appreciate it. Thanks, man. I appreciate being here.